Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We're live on Aucademy. We're with Conni and Tigger. My name is Autistic. We're going to do some quick intros, and then we're going to dive right into our topic. So I'll start us off. My name is Autistic. I use they and it pronouns. My hair is bleach blonde on top and shaved on the sides. I am a white individual, and I'm wearing a striped purple and blue long sleeve hooded top, I guess you can say. And I have plant shelf behind me. Yay. And then I'll hand it over to Tigger if you want to.
Hi everybody, Tigger here. Late 50-ish, white male, shaven head, he, him, dark grey top, mustard coloured shirt, fidget thing in my hand as ever. And over then to the awesome Conni.
Thank you, Tigger and Autistic. I'm Conni. I am people describe me as a middle-aged woman without makeup. So that's how they read me. I've also been raised as a woman. I feel like half of it. So I'm a white person with short, dark hair, glasses, wearing a t-shirt, and I'm sitting in my living room, and behind me you could see half a plant and picture, a mosaic of a horse that my father made himself. He loved horses, and I did too. When I was little. And you hear that I have a German accent, so please put up with it. It might take you a few minutes to get used to it, but I think I can make myself understood. So thanks for having me here today.
Of course. Thanks for being here. I love the horse that your grandpa made it, you said? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Love that.
That is lush.
Yeah. Also a horse person, so I relate hard to that.
We've already had so much, and I used to have a horse as well. So much in common here. We've had a long chat before. Yeah, you used to have horses, but right, that's it. But back on, because if David's not here, but I go off on tangents, which is really bad.
It's okay. We'll kind of rein each other in. It's going to be great. So Conni, I would love to hear. Oh wait, we do that too a little bit, or no? I can't remember. I think we started to do physical. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just say quickly, I am late discovered. I am 29 years old now. I discovered 2 years ago that I was autistic. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 23, but there was more missing. I had to figure it out. So I figured out that I'm autistic then, and my dedicated interest right now. Oh gosh. I am a drag performer. I actually just started getting into more performances again. And last night I made a Mario cosplay hat and like mustache and eyebrows, and it's ridiculous and I love it. So that's crafting for drag, we'll say, is my dedicated interest right now. Tigger, do you want to briefly describe yours?
For those that may not know me, some of you might still, late identified. An awful lot of thanks to awesome individuals from Aucademy in those early days. Special interests. Wow. It's going to be coffee, because it still is. I adore coffee in its shape and forms. But I will say, because I had a quick chat with Conni about this when we started, my special interest at the moment is my Auti den. And that is a shed in the back garden that I'm building. Or somebody's built one for me, but I'm finishing it off now. And it's a place where I can go and be me. And at the moment, I'm consumed by it. Literally 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, I was putting up insulation in it, and I've got loads of stuff to do tomorrow. It's where I can do this work, hence the blurred background. I'm not in my normal place at the moment. I'm going to say my special interest now is my Auti den. But more about that later, I expect. Yeah. Otherwise, I can't be talking about it. Otherwise, I need somewhere to be me. So that's where I've just moved in with my partner. So this is why this is a brilliant topic. So partner is you're typical, you're a virgin, yes. And so that Auti den became really important to me, and that's been consumed me for the past month, and coffee.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Conni, how about you?
Okay, so when I discovered I was autistic and what are my dedicated interests?
Yes.
So I discovered that I was autistic when I was 42 years old. That was 4 years ago. And it happened through and in a family therapist training that I participated in. So I was working as an anti-discrimination and diversity trainer. that was kind of an extension of my political activism, but I became more and more interested. So politics used to be my special interest, but then I became more and more interested in human relationships, because actually what I found interesting about politics was not only the outcomes, but also the process, right? So I was always looking for peaceful and just processes. So that kind of carried me to be interested more in the human relations also. Between individuals. So I did this family therapist training, and we had lectures by psychiatrists about different diagnoses. We had lectures about normal development of children and humans, and none of this fitted my development, and neither that of other family members. And then we had a lot of interaction in small groups. And I noticed that people could only tolerate me when I was in charge. Like every time I took responsibility for the situation, it went okay. But like when I counseled others, when I practiced counseling, it went okay. When I tried to structure the process, it went okay, unless people got upset at me just for trying to structure the process, right? Because a lot of the other participants said they preferred unstructured processes. But every time I was like in an equal position, or I was the counseled person, I was very unpopular. So that kind of led me to think, okay, what is this difference between me and everyone else that I've been feeling all of my life? But now I finally found a name for it. There were also autism experts among the trainers. So I had this semi-public self-discovery and self-diagnosis, which was then also, I think, which was also received positively by the experts present. And since it happened in the semi-public way, it was also colleagues from anti-discrimination work that I know. So I was thinking, okay, I just have to tell my own story. If not, somebody else is going to tell it. So I came out as autistic like instantly after the self-discovery, and I also made this part of my job. So increasingly, I offer trainings on ableism, on neuronormativity. I learned that word during the last 4 years, not immediately. And I also decided to quit the family therapist training and to start training as a neurodiverse couples counselor. So I already had a training in couples and family counseling, but I never practiced it because I never understood the problems that most couples faced, because my problems was at so much more layers and so much more, I felt them so much more intensively. Even if my relationship is very happy, there's a lot of depth, and the ups and downs are very intense. So I related more to that neurodiverse couples counseling, and that's what I'm now practicing. Yeah. And my special interest, dedicated interest, I already told you, politics is the most constant one. Like since I'm 14, I'm into politics, and with pauses, right? Activist burnout is real, and professional burnout is also something I've already experienced. I've been interested in dancing and martial arts, which also has to do with relationships, right? I mean, it's a way to to maintain and negotiate relationships while keeping the distance. At least martial arts is, and some dances are too. And then I think relationships have become my special interest. At first, I used this like as a publicity slogan, because I thought, okay, how am I going to convince neurotypical partners that an autistic person can actually counsel them on relationships? Because I was confronted instantly with this ableist stereotype. Oh, but then you can't do this. You can't work with groups. You can't empathize, right? So this happened instantly. This was said by my peers in the family therapist training. So I thought, okay, I can convince the neurotypicals. They all know we have a special interest. So I wrote on my website, hi, I'm autistic and relationships are my special interest. That was intended as a joke, but over the years, I've come to see that it's kind of true, because all my special interests, from politics to, I also wrote my thesis at university. I studied political science, wrote my thesis about family policies. So relationships is a kind of red thread in my life. I'm wondering about relationships, looking at them from an alien's perspective first, from an outsider's perspective, but then finding my own way to build them. And I talked with Tigger about the Peanuts comics, about Charles Schulz Peanuts comics. That is my current special interest, which I share with my child. And that's also about relationships. And in the Peanuts comics, you will find a lot of the problems that I also face in my neurodiverse couples counseling practice, from, excessive respectful timidity, right? Like Charlie Brown and the little red-haired girl never coming into contact, to people also just trying to just trying to see contact and but not seeing when the contact is unwelcome, like Lucy with Schröder, for example, right? So a lot of the problems I also see there. Yeah.
I'll just have a look at your website because I like to see. That's why I'm glancing at the phone bit. The website is really cool and in English, and there's your book upon there as well, which I know is only in German at the moment. But it's the slogan bit is fascinating because there's that kind of like maybe a little bit out of date idea that no empathy, no understanding, all the rest of it. Yeah. So how can we be good at this? And that tagline, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
Saying straight away, I'm autistic and relationships are my special interest, really breaks down the barriers. And you say you work globally. Do you think is there a slight? I've got off on questions. I'm sorry. Is there a slight kind of difference, do you think, in attitudes across certain countries with what you do and who you are? Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. I mean, in Germany, this whole concept of neurodiversity is not yet very well known. I think people are starting to talk about autism a lot, but the neurodiversity paradigm is not well known, like outside of leftist or queer feminist circles, even when I'm also part of larger disabled communities, and these concepts are not very well known yet. I mean, neurodiversity as a term is used, but it's not really understood in the way that I understand it. But I think this is quite new. So I have mainly couples where one member comes from an English-speaking country or even other European countries. I also had clients from other continents, but not so many. But I think what I experience, I'm also part of an autistic women self-help group. So what we hear frequently is, like, in Germany, it's really easy to get passing privilege as an autistic person, at least in my generation, because I grew up in rural South Germany. So small talk was not something we did. Neither was eye contact. So I think, and it was also, just working all the time was always a good thing. People, even if they didn't like you, they would never say anything negative about you if they just saw you being busy, from Monday to Saturday. So I think autistic people really had passing privilege. If I would have had a known disability in my childhood, I would have been sent to the special school system and would have had no chance whatsoever to develop my interests and to work in what I actually like and enjoy. So it would have been a great stigma to have a known disability. But just to pass as a speaking autistic person was really easy. And I hear that in some English-speaking countries, it's the other way around, right? That people have more problems in their daily lives because there are other communication styles that are widely accepted in society, but institutions sometimes tend to be prepared better for autistic people, or they're more prepared to accommodate. But that's just anecdotal evidence. I didn't do any research on that. That's just what I hear from people in my self-help group and from some of my clients.
I mean, that'd be an interesting one. I mean, that'd be an interesting research process to go down the route of. I'm always fascinated when we do like the global things on Aucademy, which is lush, and I want to get a chance to watch them. It's that idea of how it is in different continents. In terms of understanding what it means to be a neurodivergent individual, what it means to be an autistic individual, and I just was interested in that perception, and again, it's saddening and interesting to hear that in your country in particular that it's I don't know, I can't say we're further on down the road in the UK in terms of understanding. There's a long way to go. Even here, people get, there's still the assumption levels that, the empathy, the understanding what it means to be neurodivergent and the differences between, neurotypes and so on. But it is interesting to see how different continents are at this moment in time. So yeah, I was interested in the reply that you had about the fact that maybe, just maybe in the UK and about USA, we're a little bit further ahead in some ways, maybe not in all of them, but in some ways, in regards to accepting what it means to be neurodivergent.
I want to add to that. I mean, that you're a bit further ahead doesn't mean that everything's perfect where you live, right? And that
no way.
Also doesn't mean we're following the perfect path, because in Germany people tend to copy what's in the US mainly, or sometimes maybe also from England. But I want to add to that we are actually in Germany, I think we're still struggling a lot, or also in Switzerland and Austria, the other German-speaking countries, with the legacy of Hans Asperger and with the whole Nazi stuff, because my grandfather, he was probably as autistic as I am, and probably would not have any passing privilege today, but he did in his times, and that enabled him to be on the perpetrator side. But if an autistic person would have a diagnosis at that time, they might as well have been murdered, right? So by the state. So this is something, I think the amount of internalized ableism that a person growing up in post-war Germany has is intense, because there's a really deep-seated fear that, you know, that we still have to earn our right to existence. And I think that is something disabled people maybe experience worldwide, but here it is still very present, I think. And it's also very present still I think the inclusion of non or minimally speaking autistic people in autistic self-help and advocacy circles is not so, I mean, we could do better. The biggest self-help and advocacy organization, which I love and which I'm a member of, but is still called ESPIS. So I'm very critical of that. So there's a subtitle like people on the autism spectrum, but I'm very critical of that. And many people still self-identify with that. And they think, okay, we need this because this gives us some kind of stereotype lift, right? There's some positive stereotypes attached to this, but we're still struggling very strongly with this legacy, I think.
You know, I would say the general public in the UK have no idea at all of that legacy. No idea at all. The terms are bantered around here, left, right, and centre. It is changing a bit because of what's happening in some aspects of the media, but there's still lots of misconceptions out here and a total lack of understanding of autistic culture and history, really.
Yeah, I would say the same for the US. We are inundated with a bunch of organizations that are seeking a cure, that support, you know, like are super for ABA therapy, and, you know, trying to get awareness for autism, like we're some kind, like we're cancer, like we have cancer and we, you know, we need help in that way. It's honestly exhausting. So there are people doing a lot of good things here that are changing that discussion, that discourse. And I am seeing a small shift into the neurodiversity paradigm, which is why I'm excited to talk to you about your career, because that's really what you're about, right? It's like shifting that paradigm for people. So yeah, I would love to hear, Conni, so you did describe a little bit about already, right, in your introduction of how you got started. But what was the big push between, because before we even started, you talked about being a freelancer for most of your life. So I guess I would just love to hear more about your journey from being a freelancer for other things to becoming this consultant and trainer, and then your coaching as well, your counseling for couples. That would be really wonderful to hear about.
Yeah, so we talked about this before going live. I've always been a freelancer because I just mess up every job interview. I just can't guess expectations. And when I counsel organizations, I tell them, okay, don't make your job applicants guess what the expectations are. I know in some jobs, like in sales, it is part of the job to identify criteria, right? The ability to identify criteria that can be a point that can be something that you actually need for the job. But if you don't need it for the job, you don't have to make people guess, right? And if you need it for the job, you can still say, okay, now we are going to role play, a client conversation, and then you can do it. So I don't have this ability to guess and to identify the employer's criteria. So I've always been a freelancer. And I've always been good at, just creating spaces where people come that don't fit in anywhere else. So that's what I do in my anti-discrimination work. And that's what I also do in my counseling, I think. And actually, I experienced burnout also, right? I've been a trade union activist. I've been doing political campaigns, and I was sick and tired of this fighting. I'm really good at it. I have also studied martial arts for 12 years. I'm really good at fighting, but I just didn't feel like it anymore because I became a mother. Now I'm even a grandmother. I had to be so gentle at home, and I actually came to enjoy this gentleness. I never had this kind of safe space for myself after early childhood. Thank God I had it in early childhood. So then I want to get back to this gentleness, and then I started to work in adult education, because there I can be nice and gentle. And then I think the couple counseling was one step more in this direction, right? To be even, like just a step towards peace, and of course also to have a more predictable job that I can do from home or from an office close by, because also the training job involves a lot of traveling, and that does not suit my autistic needs at this point of my life anymore. Because, I just get off the train and Google where's the restaurant, where's the hotel, and go there. And then that's so much spontaneous decisions. That's not really what I want anymore. Yeah, even if I enjoy the work itself.
So you would say, oh, go ahead.
This couples counseling, actually, I did this. It was partly because I went to couple counseling myself at one point with my husband, and I think we've been very happy. Like we're together for 24 years, and we're really very happy and very much in love. But of course, you do have your ups and downs, and there's also external pressures, like stressful jobs and demanding family structures and that kind of thing. So, and then it was really terrible. We were not understood at all. It was like the couple counselor acted as if she never had heard such a bad story or such bad life stories. And I thought, hey, this can't be. I mean, this is a Berlin inner city. We have class struggles. We have refugees from all over the world. It just can't be that as a psychologist, you never heard a worse life story than ours. But that was basically what she said, and that was like, I think it's more the way we told it, right? The sober manner, like a kind of sober manner that we told it, than what we actually told her. But then I thought, okay, I can do better, and I also think that it's a kind of skill that my husband and I developed over the years, right? And these relationship skills. So that is something that I can give to the world and to the autistic community.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to hear also then, what's something that you just love that you get to create in your job? Something that really lights you up. I know like the whole thing, right, is part of that, but like what's something that you're really proud of or are just so happy you get to share? Like maybe more about what you were just talking about even.
Yeah, well, I'm some moments maybe when I'm proud. I mean, some clients' feedback maybe, like if a neurotypical client says, or if a person who identifies as neurotypical, because most neurotypical clients actually with time turn out not to be so neurotypical. Kind of neurodivergence, mostly ADHD or just another autism profile that doesn't draw as much attention to it as their partners. So that is also a good point, like when a partner discovers, oh, maybe I'm not so neurotypical at all. Maybe, I should also describe my personality in specific terms and not just say, hey, I'm normal, I'm just like everyone else, because that's empowering for them. But it also creates a lot of understanding between the partners, right? If not one person says, okay, I am just the standard, I have the standard expectations that everyone else does, and you have the special ones or even the special needs. So that creates a power imbalance that is really unhealthy for most relationships. Special moments in the counseling are, for example, when a neurotypical partner really mistrusted me at the beginning and thought, okay, my partner is autistic, the counselor is autistic, so am I the oppressed one now, right? Am I in the minority now? And then from this experience actually learns what it is like to be in a minority, but also has the experience that he's actually not being oppressed, right? And that you can be in a minority and still be taken seriously and still get your space and your time and get your points across. So that was a good experience. Another good experience is when neurotypical partners think their autistic partners are just being arrogant or just always want to be right in every fight, right? That's something we often hear. They always want to be right and rationalizing everything. And it is true sometimes that it appears like that, right? And I think many of us autistic people are so good at thinking things through, recognizing patterns, being rational, but also actually rationalizing, that we tend to win every argument, but still people hate us for it, right? They hate us for being right, but they also hate us because they think, okay, there's something missing there. Maybe they're not so right after all, but I don't know how to tell them. if then the neurotypical partner understands that the need of the autistic person might not be to always be right and always win the argument, but might be to understand what's going on and maybe to rationalize or to create a story or to try to create a timeline of events, because our need might be to understand what's going on cognitively in order to manage our emotions. But then, of course, the neurotypical or ADHD partner might have just another need. They might have the need to align emotions first and then come up with a common story, what might be going on. So maybe it's, one of us were always right. Maybe it's, maybe we have similar needs, but they don't come in the same order, or maybe there are also different needs. But when a neurotypical or ADHD partner goes out of the counseling session and says, "Oh, I understand. My partner wants to understand things." That's their need. So that's a good. I think that's a good feedback for me. I think then I feel successful. Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Is part of the journey, do you think, also, or do you have this happen where if it's a neurotypical partner, they get to meet another person that is autistic,
yes,
and it's like and is part of it also that they get to explore an element of you as a neurodivergent individual, and that kind of in some ways makes them go, oh well, yeah, he, she, or they does. Oh, okay. And why do you? And does that make sense? Does that form part of the journey as well?
Yes, that's part of the journey, as like being a kind of role model and say, oh yeah, I also require my partner like to set a date for sex, or to say, to tell me in the morning or the day before, well, maybe let's have sex today, which doesn't mean we have to have it, but right, just to be prepared. And they say, oh, I thought my partner was the only one with this need. And then you, as an apparently competent person, and you have the same need, or at least the same wish. Then they say, okay, they will be more tolerant with their partner. Yes. But, okay, yeah, I will, in the comments. Okay. That's a question directed to the, not to me, not to everyone.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
directed to the commenters.
Yeah.
Let me finish my point. There's also a downside to that, like this role model thing, right? Because as a counselor, of course, it's also my job to understand certain things and to guess certain things. And if I can't guess something, like if I actually don't understand what a non-autistic person wants, then that might also be frustrating for the non-autistic partner, but they will see that it's not their partner's fault, right? But it's just about the autism. But sometimes I feel that it's also, there are some gendered expectations or gender stereotypes also connected with autism. Increasingly, I used to feel very deprivileged as an autistic woman, because as you know, I think many autistic people of all genders have experienced violence, but I think the incidence of violence that autistic women or non-binary or trans people experience is really shockingly high. I've also experienced violence myself. So I think that is, but I also see a tendency of some autistic women to identify, to distance themselves from autistic men, like to identify as hyper empathetic. Of course, any autistic man can also identify as hyper empathetic, right? But I've been hearing this like from some autistic female clients, and I think this is kind of problematic. And I also am confronted with the same stereotype from neurotypical counseling clients that I, as an autistic woman, am somehow less quirky than their autistic man, or is it more easily able to adapt. And maybe I am, but that's because of gendered socializations, and that's done a lot of harm to me also.
Yeah.
Right. Like having social skills hammered into yourself. And
right.
Yeah.
I so appreciate your description of that, because that's absolutely, like, I think people forget that intersectionality
yes
was created for a reason, like conceptualized for a reason, because we have
also,
go ahead, sorry,
I didn't want to interrupt you.
It's okay, but we're here for you.
Yeah, you said intersectionality, and that also, of course, plays a role if couples come from different cultures, or if there are more dimensions of power between them than just ableism or neuronormativity, right? Like if a person, if an autistic person experiences racism, they might adapt or cope in a different way than I with my white privilege. And I also think, for example, the direct communication that many people ascribe to us, in my case, it's totally true. I prefer to communicate very directly and bluntly. Even in Germany, people notice, so it must be very blunt at times. And I think that is a good way to avoid misunderstandings in some cultures, right? But in other cultures, it will create more misunderstandings and more problems. So autistic people will choose maybe another way to cope, right? Maybe direct communication is not every autistic person's natural way to communicate. Maybe it's just one coping strategy. I'm not so sure yet, but that's something my clients make me think about. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
when you meet, go on. I was just going to say, because I think there's so much we could talk about, and there's that thing about so little time. And I was thinking of saying, is there any reoccurring theme, question, misunderstanding that you see when you meet, a couple?
A couple.
Come and
yes, yeah. I made some notes about that because there's so many. But I think, of course, the classic is communication and misunderstandings, right? So I think it applies a lot to conflict communication, how to lead a discussion, but also to everyday communication. Like I wrote this book, Liebe mit Köpfchen, unfortunately only in German. But if you speak English and German, maybe you can look into it. So my favorite, that's the relationship advice for neurodiverse couples. And my favorite chapter is, how was your day, honey? Because that's like the worst time of the day for some autistic people, right? At least for me it is. I come home after a stressful work day and my loving partner asks me, oh, how was your day, honey? I think, does he want me to relive every stressful moment of my whole day? Every time I encountered barriers, every time I saw someone, which I thought, do I have to read them or not? Every time, like my office building made me sneeze, or does he want to know how much clients I acquired, how much money I made today? And then I said something like, oh yeah, it was okay. Like I ate a falafel at noon. This was not your day.
No. I really get that one. I really get that one.
Very relatable.
And then I just say, good. And then he gets angry, of course, because he thinks I'm like withdrawing something from him, right? I'm holding something from him. And maybe I am, because I don't want to confront him with the whole heap of thoughts that I have in this moment, right? And of course, like half an hour later, if he doesn't ask me how was your day, I would maybe tell him voluntarily how my day was, right? Or just give him 1 or 2 pieces of information. But that's really bad. And it has to do with managing transitions, right? Transitions are usually challenging for us autistic people. And it's, of course, also that we have different expectations for communication. Like when I trained as a neurodiverse couples counselor together with 4 neurotypical identified and 1 ADHD person. So they said things about us like, they actually use language to transmit information. Like, how weird can you be using language to transmit information? And that's it. And of course, my husband uses language just to connect with me. He might just as well give me a hug or a kiss. And sometimes he does. So that's a challenge, right? That's really a challenge for couples to find ways to connect that are not overwhelming for one of them. So they might be verbal, they might be non-verbal, we might have to find rituals for transition situations like this. But then there's more to it than the transition situation, because I always thought, okay, this is about autism and communication. But then I talked to a disability rights activist who uses a wheelchair, and she said she had the same problem. Like when her partner asked her, how was your day, honey? She thinks, do you want to know about all the unpleasant experience I make every day? Because a certain portion of them is bound to be unpleasant, right? Like when I live in Berlin inner city, I mean, it's overwhelming all the time. Like every time I leave the house, I have to put my headphones on really loud, right? So I don't want my partner to carry this whole burden with me, right? I think it's okay to keep some of my feelings to myself. And that is something that a lot of neurodiverse couples have. I think sometimes they suffer from a lack of understanding, but sometimes they suffer from a awareness of the other person suffering. Often it's mutual. That is kind of too deep, and that is hurting both of them, right? So there are sometimes good reasons not to talk about things, but sometimes, the feelings are still there and are still transmitted, and people don't know where to go with their suffering. So I think that is and being able to hold that as a counselor, I think it's a big part of the job too.
Yeah, you're setting that container for people
Yes,
to figure that out in.
Couples to prepare them, okay, there will always be this amount of negativity maybe in your life. Maybe you can reduce barriers, you can reduce stress, but you will still have to cope with a partner who has a reason not always to be smiling, right? Yeah.
Right. Wow.
So that's the main thing. And other things are, a lot of my clients come after one of them experiences burnout, which a lot of autistic people do experience, especially in today's work life where you have daily team meetings and open plan offices. But also, of course, in a couple, it's always a challenge when one person has a burnout, the other person is the next candidate for burnout, because you're bound to have some common task, especially if you have children or elderly parents or a dog to care for. So that's just a common thing. I think also a lot of clients, especially autistic clients, are also in the process of coming out as trans or non-binary, and often their relationship needs to adjust, adapt, and the partners need to process this discovery, right? I also experience in couples where both of the people are autistic, both of the partners are autistic, or all of them, you might also have three, but that there's kind of a lack of communication sometimes. So I think the mutual respect, or maybe also the mistrust in verbal communication, or the reluctancy to use verbal communication to actually communicate about relationships and feelings, can also lead to some problems not being solved, right? It can be very harmonious at first, but after some years it can also create, problems might be building up, and there's a big fear of tackling them sometimes, or people don't know where to start. So that's maybe the hardest, even, because for everything else there are tools, but for this, you have to be very gentle. You don't want to break a shell there, right? You want to be gentle and really go there with very soft gloves, touch people with very soft gloves. You have to walk on the eggshells, right? I mean, that's a common neurotypical partners complaints. I always have to walk on eggshells. I think it's okay. You should walk on eggshells with your partner. It's okay, but that's a delicate one, right? When couples scream at each other, you can get them to lower their tone of voice after 3 sessions. When couples don't talk at all, it's much harder to get them conversation.
Huh.
Did that answer your question?
Oh, that was brilliant. It's interesting because, like, I think so many people that I've met, that I've worked with, and that I know, the first part of the journey is they go, "Oh, you're autistic." You go, "Yeah," and then they go, "Well, he, she, or they," like, "Yeah, I do." And this is what, really, yeah. And it's that. But you also mentioned something about, coming across. It's something akin to, people see you as a professional, therefore you must be normal. Yeah. There's that bit about There's that bit about them when you go, by the way, I'm autistic and I do this because I do that and I have the same thing. People go, "Wow, I did," but you're a professional. I didn't know that. And there's that. It is, isn't there? And there's that kind of then journey that people go on. But I should think it's. I mean, there's a cultural issue as well. Because again, interested by the 3 different continents, but very much so here. There's the baggage that people bring, the expectation levels of what it means to be autistic individual, and if you ever, you must have worked with individuals where they started off as not knowing, or not realizing, and then all of a sudden one person goes, "Hi, guess what?" And then the journey then they're going to go on must be quite interesting.
What's really sometimes difficult is that partners who identify as neurotypical, they diagnose their partner as autistic, right? It's often people Google their partner's quirks, right? Or they talk to friends, or somebody, or they might be acquainted with a social worker who says, "Hey, your husband reminds me of some of the kids I know at school," right? And
I've just seen your. I was just looking at your blog, how not to diagnose your partner. Yeah, so I was just checking that. Yeah, the spouse diagnosed mom. I was just looking at that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, because spouse diagnosed is a fixed expression among neurodiverse couples counselors, and I think many live on that. But I actually want to discourage spouses who diagnose their partner who's not ready to accept this diagnosis, or who doesn't find this label helpful for themselves at that moment. So I actually want to discourage them from seeking counseling with myself, because the moment there are in a explicitly neurodiverse couples counseling, the label sticks on them, right?
Right.
And no matter what they say. So I really, I'm really very clear about this, that it's each person's own process. I know that I hear from some people who are much younger than me that they have been grateful for other people bringing their attention to autism, or that they might be autistic or otherwise neurodivergent. But I do think that the stigma attached to it is very strong. And I think once you have dropped this, right, once you have said it, you shouldn't repeat it all the time. You should just leave the process to the potentially autistic person themselves, and you should let them self-define, because some, people might just identify as sober, rational, shy, or whatever. That's also okay for them, right? That's hard enough. You don't have to identify as autistic if it's not helpful for yourself.
Well, I think that does play into shifting into the neurodiversity paradigm, because really, when we fully embrace what that is, labels don't really need to play a role as much. Like, we're just looking at who the person is individually, what their support needs are, and getting them to live fulfilling lives. So I think like there's a role of that for sure. And I was actually going to ask you, in your sessions, do you find it difficult to, I don't know how to word this, but like, say you have a couple and one of them is absolutely either medically diagnosed or self-diagnosed autistic, and then you have their partner who, as you're counseling them, you're understanding, oh, this person is most likely also neurodivergent themselves. Does that get in the way of the work that you do? Because is there like a restriction on how you can communicate to them about their own neurodivergence? Like, you were just talking a little bit on that, but I'm wondering.
There is no restriction. I restrict myself on this, and I am in conversation with other counselors or therapists, and I know that a lot of them have the rule that they pronounce a diagnosis that they have, or they pronounce a diagnosis that is in their head, and they think that is as the ethical way to do things. I choose not to, but it's partly due to, Germany and the environment I'm practicing in, because it's very hard in the city where I'm living to get a formal diagnosis. So people who self-diagnose, they have a long, journey before them.
Right.
And the other thing is, I do think that depending on what the support system is and what the social circles of the couple or the individuals are, it might be really hard for them to have the diagnosis. So what I do, I try to frame it in everyday words. What I see, what I perceive about their personality. And then the most I would say, like, is some people might also frame this as ADHD-ish, right? So that's the most thing that I say.
Okay.
One could also say something like that, but I try to frame it in everyday words or offer different options. And that's basically what I always do. Like, I also try to put forward like 2 or 3 theories. 3 is always better than 2, because when 2, you can, one person might adhere to one theory, the other to the other. So I am always looking for the third option, right? For the third theory there. So in order to, to spark creativity and open up a new space. But what I do with every non-autistic partner, or every partner that presents themselves as neurotypical, I always say, try to frame your wishes and your needs in specific, open, honest, and personal terms. Don't just say, okay, I'm the normal one and I expect what loving couples expect in every Hollywood movie, right? Or in every love song. I'm not the normal one. Just claim your personality, present yourself in individual and specific terms, because that will create equal ground with your partner, right? That will create equal ground. And Jacek, you said about the neurodiversity paradigm. If you take it seriously, any couples counseling is a neurodiverse couples counseling, right? Because then you don't you would have just every person's individual neurological markup and life story and what goes into it. Just as every couples counseling is maybe a transcultural couples counseling if you don't translate culture as nationality or race, if you translate culture just as like family culture, individual culture, habits, ways of doing things, subcultures, right? So that all goes into it. But of course, the neurodiverse couples counseling, as I do it, being mainly for couples where one member is autistic, or increasingly also people with ADHD start coming to me. I think it's also partly anti-discrimination work, right? Because it's always couples who are affected by our society structures in an unequal way, right? So it's always about leveling the ground in the couple and about, trying to not add to the oppression at home, and also trying not to fall into the trap of, exaggerated helping and dysfunctional rescuing. It's all about leveling the ground at home and not adding to the barriers and to the oppression outside.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for the work that you do. That's amazing.
Do you know what I'm thinking is we could, we could desperately do with your book. At least an audio version of it in English would be superb.
Oh.
Yeah, I would love it, right? I mean, I'm too lazy to look for an English publisher. I just don't have time for it. But if any of you want, so maybe I could tell something about the chapters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's I really tried to go through the whole journey of finding a partner, and then what to do with them after you found them. That's the other part. And actually, I have to say, my experience of finding a partner is long way ago. So that was before online dating, right? So I did some research in that. So it's like, what do I do? How do I find out if I want a partner after all? Because it's also a societal norm that you're happier together, but it doesn't apply to everyone, right? Not everybody needs a fixed partner or needs a partner at all. So you can be happy alone or with your cat or, just with some online acquaintances. And then finding a partner, getting to know each other. Then the beginning of the relationship, like how do you deal with your own feelings? Because I mean, talk about special interests. If you're in love as an autistic person, oh my God, you don't get any sleep anymore, right? It's hard. I mean, I have physical, I have really physical pain if I don't see my partner for a long time, right? So it's really hard also not to get overwhelmed by it, to even stand to stand their presence or to stand their absence. And then when you're together, what do you do with them, right? after having dinner or after whatever. There's also about sexuality and consensus. Yes means yes, but how do you recognize a yes? That's very important, I think. And then, what do you do? Like the trickiest situations, like what do you do when you meet their family or their circle of friends? So you have to brief and debrief before, do you want them to coach you in social situations? Or if they do against your will, how can you stop them? And then, of course, if the relationship is more stable, more long-term, what do you want to do? Some people want to move in together. Can you afford a shed in the garden like Tigger has? Or can you just make a quiet corner in your inner city flat for any of the partners? Autistic partners tend to want this, but I think it's also non-autistic partners can also benefit from having their own space. So then, how to divide household work. Who decides if we want to have kids? You also have to defend yourself against ableist stereotypes if you want to have kids as an autistic person, if you're diagnosed at that time. Or what happens if you get the diagnosis when you're already way in the relationship, right? How do you process this as a couple? What do you do? And then I write about common conflicts, the walking on eggshell things, the empathy and misunderstanding things, how to actually lead a discussion, because discussions with neurodiverse couples tend to have 2 or 3 phases, right? First, you discuss the topic, then you discuss about the misunderstandings that came up or the hurt that came up in the discussion. And then hopefully a third time you come back on the original topic, but that often doesn't happen. So what I advise as a counselor is just, don't slam the door and go out and be frustrated and go back and, yell at each other again. Just plan for those 3 phases, discuss for 20 minutes, take a break, walk around the block, then have some meta communication about the first discussions, then take a break again, and then come back on the original topic. You won't ever eliminate those phases. You won't ever have no misunderstandings, but you can just plan for them, right? You can anticipate them and take the hurt out of it. And then, how to deal with honesty, how to deal with agreements, which are usually for autistic people, like an agreement can be like a contract, right? And for a non-autistic person, it can just be, an intention, a declaration of intention. So that's kind of thing. But also, how to avoid burnout, how to recognize emergencies, because that's a common complaint from non-autistic partners. And I think many autistic people tend to have a different tolerance for emergencies or a different way dealing with them. And that can come across as insensitive or it can come across as incompetent, but maybe it's all. But I don't know. In my case, it's like the difference between emergency and daily life is not so big for me as for some other people. Like it's harder for me to go to the cinema than to give birth, for example. So for me, I will operate totally differently in an emergency situation. I will be calm compared to a neurotypical person, and in everyday life I might be very agitated and excited compared to a neurotypical person. So they might think I don't recognize the emergency. I do, but I deal with it differently. But that's the thing long-term couples need to talk about, right? What is when do you call the hospital, for example, right? And then violence, of course, is a topic that can't be spared, because we're overrepresented on the affected side. On the perpetrator side, I don't know, but I suspect that also some autistic people tend to become more physical under stress. But also our partners can get to, if we don't give them the thing they want, they might just try to get it from us, right, with any means. So that is something that is really very present for us. And then I also discussed some neurotypical partners claim to be depressive through their neurodiverse relationship. I also discussed that claim critically, because I think I didn't want to mention it to give it no credit, but I think it would be also lazy and cowardly not to mention it. So I want to give my own perspective on that too. And then, of course, I also talk about the strengths and joys of neurodiverse relationships, because I think there is so much magic in neurodiverse relationships, because they can be, since they tend to be not so easy, and not just things don't fall into place just, like in a Hollywood movie normally, which they also don't do for other people, but for us it's even harder. It's a big chance to create your relationship consciously, right? To do things your way and to agree on things and to negotiate things. That's a big chance. You can create your own family, your own relationship culture. The thing that I mentioned, partner as a special interest, can be very nice for the partners, at least in the beginning. Sexuality, we also be very creative about that. And I think our sensory sensitivity can also enhance the experience there. So they can make it difficult, but they can also enhance the experience. And I also think some autistic people's flexibility around gender roles, that is also a plus for relationships, right? Sometimes the partners struggle with it. Especially if it's experienced publicly, right? If it's expressed publicly or visually. But I think inside the relationship, that also makes room for a lot of flexibility and individuality. And I also think that's something to celebrate.
That's so robust and comprehensive. I love it. I would love to see that be in English so I could read it as well. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
We need to get an audio version of that book. That's what we need. We need to get someone to translate it.
That would be great.
And that'd be lush. Somebody's mentioned publishers might do it, which would be great. So there's a Jessica Kingsley publisher in Britain, but it's I don't know of another book like it.
Yeah.
And I might have to do some research, but I don't. So that'd be fantastic.
Same.
So go on, we'll try and get that sorted for you. We'll try and do some finding out, because I want to read it really badly. Yeah.
Yes. Let's see what context we come up with.
Awesome. Thank you for walking through that. We do have a few comments that someone just mentioned. Want to read, so if you want to throw those up. Amanda says, what do you think the most differences neurodivergents have in human relationships?
Whew.
Loaded question.
Yes, because I mean, the difference is not in the neurodivergent person, the difference is in the relationship, right? Of course, I think negotiating distance and closeness is a big issue for neurodivergent people, but it's not like we always want more distance. It's like, I think a lot of neurodivergent people feel more permeable, like more, far more vulnerable also to some things, and just need to process and need to negotiate this closeness and distance. Maybe we don't have this inner shell, inner protective shell, and sometimes need an outer one. But again, it doesn't apply to all of us. I think it's not like all my autistic people have one need or have the same need. Sometimes I also hear a need of distance from the neurotypical partners. They might be more reluctant to express it sometimes because it's contrary to some norms, but I don't think there is one one difference that all neurodivergent people have. Sensory needs play a role in everything, I think. It's also in discussions, who perceives who as screaming, like, partners raising their voice, and a neurodivergent person might perceive it as screaming, or also the other way around. My blunt tone of voice might also be offensive to my probably not to my partner who doesn't have a diagnosis but is surely highly sensitive, right? So I think that plays a role in everything, and maybe also different speeds, different paces. Some people also would call it monotropism, right? As not being able or not wanting to multitask. And I think also the need, as I said in discussions, maybe one person needs to understand what's going on first and then can assess their feelings, and the other person needs to align emotionally first or get their feelings across before making up a story about what happened. So these different paces are, I think they play a role in almost every conflict. Yeah. Yeah, I think that applies a lot to NT relationships would be improved by teaching them direct and specific autistic communication and boundary setting. I think that applies a lot, for example, to sexuality, but also to other things like, personal time, or also doing activities alone. I think so many autistic partners who finally get their two evenings off a week from their neurotypical partner, then the neurotypical partner after that said, that was wonderful, I got to meet my friends again too. So I think, like breaking all kinds of social norms about relationship. I mean, just as you can learn, just as heterosexuals can learn from the queer community, I think also that is something that neurotypicals can learn from neurodivergent or neurodiverse couples. But then again, I think direct communication and boundary setting of autistic people does not necessarily apply across all classes and cultures in the same way. But yeah, I do think that I do advocate direct communication, especially also about physical intimacy and consensus. But I know it's not for everyone. What about navigating professional relationships? I don't understand that question. Please, Amanda, maybe can you specify it again? Or do you understand it, Jessica and Tigger? I don't know.
I would say
No, same.
What about navigating? So like they're talking about the communication differences and the traits that might cause challenges between two people in a professional setting.
Yes, at work, yes. Phew, that's a hard one. I mean, the good thing about professional relationships is there might be more explicit rules about them than about personal and private relationships, but it's tricky. I mean, even for myself, I think I'm better at managing my private relationships than my professional ones, unless I'm really unless I can really create a space because I'm in charge, or because I work very independently together with a colleague who has the same amount of independence. So where we can create our own thing, then it's easy. But otherwise, I think as always, as long as there are like hidden expectations, unwritten rules, it's always difficult. And I would always say it's the organization's task to make, to question the unwritten rules, to dismiss them or write them down, to, to create spaces where people can tell about their feelings and their access needs. So I think that's a difficult one. Like I've been counseling teams also, like neurodivergent teams. The problems are kind of the same as in relationship, but then you have the explicit power relations at work, that add to it. And they are also between colleagues, because, even if you have the same level of power, your relation to the boss, right? That is also a power factor. So I think that's a really tricky one. I would not say that I'm the expert on this too. I'm sorry.
So, Aucademy writes, the neurotypical cis straight normative expectations for sexual/romantic relationships can be dangerous for autistic people, and the normative pressure means we can miss working out our gender, sexuality, and boundary needs. Definitely can be better when you learn your profile, control your mask, and date someone with a similar or complementary profile who respects your boundaries.
Yeah, and I really love that similar or complementary profile, because I think a lot of autistic people actually, once they discover they're autistic, they actually seek out an autistic partner. I personally, maybe I would not do it. Maybe I'm seeking more the complementary profile. Maybe I like someone who complements me, but who also sometimes challenges me. And a lot of neurodiverse couples also, if they're in happier phases, they also enjoy complementing each other and even helping each other or dividing tasks. So I'm all for equal division of tasks, right? I'm all for justice also in the home, but sometimes it can make sense that people divide their tasks, that one person does the dishes and the other person who might be like too sensitive to touch the water or to hear the dishes clapping against each other just does something else, right? It can make sense and I can enjoy it, but of course there's always the danger that a one-sidedness slips in, right? But I really like that both are okay, right? Similar and complementary. Both are good options. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we are past the hour, so I wanted to check in. Connie, how you feeling? Do you want to dive into anything else before we wrap up?
No, I loved your questions and I love your comments. So thank you very much for having me here. I feel very honored actually to be in this space.
We are honored to have you, so thank you for joining us.
I even feel that I didn't take a sip from my Linus cup, but I will now.
No, honestly, before we went on, the comments about the horses, the history with Peanuts and Charlie Brown, Snoopy and so on were fantastic. I want that book.
Me too.
I need that book in English. Really badly.
It's not perfect. I wrote it 3 years ago. I would write some things differently now, but I think it's always evolving. And also my clients are getting more assertive all the time and more conscious. So I can really feel that our whole society is in a big learning process regarding neurodiversity. And I think the clients that come now are different from those that came 3 years ago. I really see this that people are more empowered. A lot of people.
So that's. I mean, I've been into a final question where before we go on to the last two questions, I apologize. But that again, I thought was interesting. I was in the back of my head about the fact that culturally, I'm more aware of what it means to be autistic than I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and I think I have a feeling that the planet is as well, mostly because of situations like this, where we get to talk across continents, where we get to see each other online and share information and so on. The culture, what it means to be autistic has come on so much. We've got a long way to go. But I feel very much so that, you would have individuals that, my rights as an autistic individual have changed considerably in the past, internally have changed considerably in the past couple of years. And I hope we'll continue to do so. So thank you. And I'm conscious that you have someone that might be waiting for you to go and read a story or say goodnight and stuff. We mentioned that at the beginning as well. So if I'll do the first one if I may. What's your favorite stim?
Yeah, I think my favorite stim is dancing. That sounds, but it's not, you shouldn't think that I am dancing in a way that looks like stimming. I think I'm a quite good dancer on most days. If I'm stressed or, kind of badly adjusted, I'm also out of rhythm, but I think I'm a fairly good dancer. But I just like to close the curtains and just jump around the kitchen with loud music and then sing really badly. And sing, I really the worst singer in the whole world. My music teacher at school, he says I should not sing when the whole class was singing. I should drum the rhythm with felt tips on the table. That's how bad I sing, right? I still have to do it at home when there's nobody around. And then I always have, when I am on a call like this, I always have some stimming toys. So now I am at the office, I have an assortment of stimming toys for myself and my clients. And now I thought, I'm at home, I don't have any stimming toys. But then I just stole this from my grandchild. This is for 1 year old that are teething. So it has different textures there and different, degrees of hardness and softness. And you can make you can even make glasses out of it. Or you can make out of it.
I love it.
So maybe you look like in the drugstore or in a toy store for toys for 1-year-olds or infants. That can be really good for stimming too. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I love how colorful it is too. That's so good. Yes, and the last question is, what is your favorite form of potato?
Oh, okay, that's difficult. I come from Germany, which is really like a potato country, but in the south, so we eat actually more pasta, noodles type of things than potatoes. My favorite form of potatoes are French fries. I love having French fries for breakfast. And when I was at university, I was like the last one to go to there was a French fry shop, and I was the last one to go there. Nobody else ate French fries. And then they changed from French fries to vegan sandwiches. And the thing was, like, for many years, the vegan sandwiches still smelled of French fries. And that was like the silent revenge of the French fries eaters. I absolutely love that.
That's so
I
funny.
do eat vegan sandwiches too today, but I still love my fries with lots of mayonnaise. Yeah.
Oh, lush.
Can't go wrong with French fries.
Oh,
Oh,
we've had
Lisa
somebody
Marie.
just say, yeah, just ordered the book.
Thank you.
Oh, hey.
Yay.
Wonderful. All right, friends. Tigger, what's your favorite stem and potato?
Oh, favorite potato, mashed potato. Mashed potato with the skins on and black pepper. So don't take the skins off. Mashed potato with the skins on and black pepper is like unbelievably gorgeous. And I like to eat it out of the saucepan, much to the annoyance of everybody else. But wooden spoon, saucepan, make it absolute perfectional completely. Stem, at the moment, it was blue tack, but I had accidents with blue tack. Like I ruined part of the carpet and I got it stuck in my jeans because I forgot I dropped it on like a live and stuff in other areas. So at the moment, if I need something in my hand, so tonight I've got a bolt from the shed. You can't see that, yeah? The shed I've mentioned already. See, I'm surrounded by shed stuff at the moment. That's my hyper focus, right? So yeah. And yours?
I have my favorite pig here, who's squishy and soft, and I can like the sensation of the fabric around my finger for some reason. Like oh god, it is heaven for me. And then potato. It is so hard to choose. I don't honestly think I could pick a favorite, but right now I guess I'm feeling little hash brown rounds, like they're little discs of potato that are kind of like hash browns, like they're fried and they're crispy. I do love those, so we'll go with that. All right.
Now
well,
I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know, me too. I'm about to go eat. Oh gosh. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Or if you're watching this on the replay, thank you for being here. Tigger, thank you for hosting with me. And Connie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful discussion. I hopefully one day we'll see your book in English, and if not, then I'm just gonna have to go back to learning German because
you don't.
But if you do, then you could do the audible version.
There's an audio version in German. Yeah.
Oh wow! Okay, there you go.
You can find it on the publisher's page. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day,
so
everybody.
Much for having me. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you both. Bye.